Sunrise has happened, and we'll be walking towards Mina. The ladies might take the bus, depending on the situation. The men who are going for Qurbani will be walking. So generally, we will leave our place in Muzdalifah and walk to the border of Mina and wait there until sunrise. As soon as the sun has risen, we will move into the lands of Mina. There are 3 obligations. Now it is the day of Eid. Your family here is getting ready for going for Eid Salat to the mosque. We have 3 rituals that we are busy performing on the day of Eid. The first is Rami. Rami is the stoning of the Jamarat. Second is Qurbani, the slaughtering of an animal. And third is the shaving of the head. These are the 3 rituals that are wajib on the day of Eid. Okay. So, Rami. So, on the day of Eid, we are only stoning one pillar. There are 3 pillars in Jamarat. We're stoning the third one. You will see everybody on that day is stoning the third one. Nobody is stoning first and second. On Eid day, we stone only the third one, which is the last one, the Jamratul Aqaba. And you stone it 7 times. The requirement is that all 7 pebbles must strike. You must see your 7 pebbles strike. It's a big wall now. It isn't a small elongated pillar anymore. It's a big wall. You aim for as best you can for the middle of the big pillar, and you see your 7 pebbles strike. So you get up close. We'll talk about that inshallah when we get there. You get up close and you see your 7 pebbles strike. They cannot just fall out of your hand. There actually has to be a conscious throwing of the pebble. Okay. The striking must happen between sunrise and sunset. Okay. On the day of Eid, there's an exception for ladies. They can strike earlier, but otherwise, in general, between sunrise and sunset. Okay. So there are 3 pillars, as I said earlier. This is an old picture, but this is what the wall looks like. It's a huge, massive wall. Okay, and you're aiming for the middle of the wall as best you can. I mean, it's impossible to get it to the exact middle, but you aim for the middle of the big elongated pillar. Okay, and the crowds are this large, if not larger. Okay, everybody is pushing and shoving to get up close. People are throwing their slippers from 50 feet away. You want to get up close because there's no way you can watch your pebble strike unless you get up close. Okay, and it's possible. People wonder whether it's possible to see your pebble strike. It's possible to see your pebble strike. Okay, even though there are hundreds of pebbles coming. Okay, now the other thing with Rami is that this is also a multi-story structure. We cannot stone from anywhere other than the ground floor. Okay, so you have to be with the group because there's a certain way to get to the ground floor. Otherwise, if you take a different route, you will end up on the upper floor, and that becomes a problem. And then there's no way out other than to go back an hour, hour and a half sometimes, and then walk back. Okay, because of the way they've designed the route logistically. Follow the group, and we go in a group anyway. Okay, you have to keep up with the group in order to get to the ground floor. Okay. On the day of Eid then, after having performed your Rami, and men and women, all of us will perform Rami, Qurbani, the slaughtering of the animal. As far as the women are concerned, you will have an agent. You will have a representative who will perform your Qurbani on your behalf. On the men's side, our group, one of the unique things about our group is that we actually go for Qurbani ourselves. Okay? For those who are up to it, inshallah most of us will be up to it, you will have an opportunity to slaughter your own animal. It's like no other group. Other groups send a representative even for the men, and they're just sitting in the tent waiting for the news to come. Okay, Aqil, your Qurbani is done, now you go and get your halaq. No, for us, we actually go. Okay? So our group will be separate from the rest of the group, inshallah. We will walk separately, we will go to Rami separately, we will go to Qurbani separately, we will slaughter our own animal, and then we'll come back and do our halaq, inshallah. Okay? The obligation in terms of the kind of animal and what we do with the meat, etc., inshallah, God willing, will cover there. It's not necessary to cover here. Once Qurbani is done, the next step is halaq. Okay, which is now the shaving of the head. This is the last ritual required for Eid day. It's a day of celebration. You have completed the rituals primarily of Hajj, and you shave your head. Women will be told, okay, your Qurbani is done. You go and you do taqsir. There's no halaq for women, but at that point the rituals for Eid day are done. Okay, and now all the prohibitions that we talked about, 25 prohibitions, are lifted except 3. 3 remain after the day of Eid. 1 is the use of perfume. 2, intimacy with one's spouse. And 3, hunting. Those 3 restrictions remain after Eid day, and they get lifted at certain points throughout the remaining rituals. Okay. There are a few remaining rituals. One is the tawaf of Hajj, the sa'i, the tawaf of Hajj, 2 rakat namaz, and sa'i. Okay, those are the first set of 3 rituals. They are performed exactly like we performed the rituals earlier for Umrah. Okay, they can be performed at any time now after Eid day. Okay, they can be performed on that night, on the 11th night, or the 12th night, 11th day. Doesn't matter. It can be performed up to the point where we leave. Okay, but it has to be performed before we leave. There's no. But if you choose to delay it, and some people choose to delay it, then those 3 restrictions remain, as we talked earlier. After these 3 rituals are completed, the restriction of the use of perfume is lifted. So after your tawaf and 2 rakat namaz and sa'i, if you wish to go and take a shower with scented soap, there's no problem. Okay, because the restriction of fragrance is lifted. Then there is another tawaf and 2 rakat namaz. This is tawaf nisa and 2 rakat namaz that follows tawaf nisa. Again, other than the niyyah, the tawaf is performed the exact same way. The restrictions, the obligations are identical. Okay, tawaf nisa is wajib. Without this, the obligation or the restriction on intimacy with one's spouse is not lifted. Okay, so if you leave Makkah without this, you have a problem. Okay, because the intimacy restriction is not lifted until these 2 rituals are completed. Now, if you are performing Hajj, for those who are performing Hajj for the 2nd, 3rd time, and you're performing it, let's say for your marhum grandfather who's passed away, okay, this restriction is not for him. This restriction is yours. So you are performing Hajj for someone who's passed away. But if you don't perform these 2 rituals, then the restriction on intimacy with one's spouse is a problem for you, not for someone who's deceased. So you can't say, well, I'm performing it for my marhum grandparent. He's not alive. He doesn't need this situation anymore, meet this situation anymore. I don't need to do this tawaf. No, you have to, because this restriction is yours. Okay. Okay, so quickly, these are, so after this is done, intimacy with spouses is lifted. Now you are left with just a couple of more rituals. There is a ritual called Mabit, which is the wukuf at Mina. We arrive in Mina on the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Eid. We perform those 3 rituals. There is an obligation to remain 2 nights in Mina. Okay? The 11th night and the 12th night. But the obligation is only to remain there for half the night. You can stay for the whole night, but the obligation, wajib obligation, is only half the night. Either the first half of the night or the second half of the night. First half of the night, meaning you take from Maghrib to Fajr and you divide the night in 2. You either stay the first half or the second half. Okay, or stay both. But one of those halves you must stay on both nights, 11th and 12th. And while you stay there on the 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah, on both days then, on the 11th of Dhul Hijjah, the day after Eid, and the day after that, 12th of Dhul Hijjah, you go back and you stone the pillars. Now, unlike the first day where you stone only one pillar, on the second day you stone all 3. And the 3rd day you stone all 3. So on the 11th of Dhul Hijjah and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, you stone all 3. Each of them 7 pebbles. Jamaratul Ula, Wusta, Aqaba. Okay? And the niyyah, you'll see in the slides, it's fine. And that's it. Once you have completed your stay on the 11th and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah in Mina, and you have completed these rituals of Rami on the 11th day and the 12th day, the obligation is to stay in Mina until Dhuhr on the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah. So most of us, what we will do is we will stone on the 12th day and then stand and wait in the area of Mina, in the area of Jamarat, in the area of Jamarat, waiting. As soon as the adhan for Dhuhr comes, we are ready to leave Jamarat and head towards our hotel in Makkah. We generally walk because it's the most easiest way to get out of there. And at that point, all the rituals, alhamdulillah, God willing, are complete of Hajj. Okay? And so that brings us to the end. I just want to talk about 2 minutes and talk about some very quick masail. Prayers. We're going for Hajj. Pray while you're on the plane. You will have, depending on the time your flight is, I don't know what time people are flying, but there'll be a Fajr Salat potentially while you're on the plane. Don't let your Salat become qada. Pray on the plane, please. Okay? And most of us will be Hujjaj on those planes heading now towards Istanbul and then Medina. Pray. Please pray. Okay? And we should be praying anyway when you're traveling. Okay? There are apps available that give you an estimated time for Salat, okay? But you'll find generally people are praying, you know the time for Salat. You have to pray not at Toronto time, Fajr, or at Istanbul time, you have to pray at Fajr time in the air. So approximately whatever time it is Fajr in the air, it may be 2 hours after you depart, okay? You have to pray at Fajr time in the air, wherever you are, relative to the ground. Qibla, while you're traveling to Istanbul, generally we're traveling towards Qibla. So there's no problem if you can pray while standing, ideally, and the stewardesses do allow us to pray in groups. So you should be able to pray. If they're being difficult, you can pray while seated. There's no problem. And generally, we're traveling in the direction of Qibla, so there's no problem. You sit and you recite your salat. Okay. In Makkah and Medina, in the blessed cities, we're going to be there for less than 10 days in both cities. Generally, we are musafir, we are staying there for less than 10 days. We should be reciting qasr. Except in the cities of Makkah and Medina, you're allowed to pray full. Okay? In Masjid al-Nabi, in Masjid al-Haram, or even in your hotel. Please do not pray in the hotel. You were walking distance from the Haram. Do find an opportunity, even if it is not at prime time, go and pray in the Haram, but you can pray full salat. And the thawab of praying in the masjid is multifold. Thousands times more than praying at home. So might as well pray your full salat. Why you want to pray qasr? Okay, when you have an opportunity to maximize the rewards. Salatul Jama'ah, congregational prayers. Slight difference between Muqalladeen of Sayyid Sistani versus Muqalladeen of the Rahbar. Muqalladeen of Sayyid Sistani says that you cannot pray Salatul Jama'ah technically with the Ahl Sunnah brothers. You can join them shoulder to shoulder as we should, out of unity for the Ummah. But you pray with the niyyah of furada, okay? The muqalladeen of the rahbar, Sayyid allows jama'ah with the Ahl Sunnah brothers, okay? So you pray with the niyyah of jama'ah. Now, the other thing with jama'ah is that they recite, after Surah Al-Hamd, they recite a passage of the Quran as opposed to a second surah, okay? If it is so you recite your second surah, okay? So if I'm reciting, let's say, Maghrib with him, I recite my Surah Al-Hamd, I recite the second surah, whichever surah it is that I know, I recite my second surah. And then he is continuing on, because he recites a long passage. I have a few choices. I can either listen quietly, because I may not necessarily know, I'm not a hafiz of the Quran, I don't necessarily know the passage. I just listen. If it is a passage I'm familiar with, he's reciting Surah Yasin, he's reciting Surah Waqi'ah, Surah Mulk, some commonly recited surahs that we're familiar with, you follow along. Or third option is you do dhikr. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, whatever dhikr, okay? While he continues to recite the Quran. Either of these three options, after you finish your second surah, is perfectly fine, okay? Timing for salat. There is a slight difference between our time for Maghrib and their time for Maghrib. Approximately 15-minute gap. They normally give, after their adhan, a slight gap before they start their salat. Watch the clock. If 15 minutes have passed by, our time for Maghrib has set in, you can pray with them, your Maghrib is fine. If in the closer days towards Hajj, they move quickly because they want to get people moving again, in 5, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, they start their salat, then not enough time has passed. Our time for Maghrib is not set in. You stand up, you pray a qada salat with them, but after salat is done, you pray Maghrib again. Maghrib is really the only time where there is a slight difference, enough of a difference, where you have to watch the clock. Okay, or if you're up in the open air in the third floor and you can see the redness disappear on the other side, then time for Maghrib is set in and you are perfectly fine. Okay, sajda. Okay, we are allowed to perform sajda on something that grows from the earth, something that is inedible, something that is not worn. Okay, and so you cannot perform sajda on the carpet. The turba is a problem in that part of the world. Okay, if you take it with you, be cautious because you don't know who's around you. Okay, we've had issues in the past. So, but there is plenty of marble floor. Okay, if you get there early enough in the haram, you can do sajda on the marble floor and there's no problem. In Medina, they've made it a little bit more tighter, but in Makkah, there's plenty of marble floor. In Medina, you need to get there with plenty of time and find the right spots where you can do sajda on the marble floor. And the last slide. You will find inevitably, every day, there will be an announcement after the wajib prayers that there is a salatul mayyit. Okay, people are passing away. Okay, for whatever reason, young, old, sometimes there's one mayyit, sometimes there's multiple mayyit. Out of respect for the mayyit, you stand up and you join them for salatul mayyit. Okay, now, when we recite salatul mayyit here, there is the long dhikr that is recited between the takbirat. Okay, these are mustahabbat. The wajib requirements for salatul mayyit are very brief. There are 5 takbirat. After the first takbir, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadar rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Second takbir, simple salawat only. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. After the third takbir, Allahumma ighfir lil mu'minina wal mu'minat. And the fourth takbir, Allahumma ighfir li hadal mayyit. Fifth takbir, Allahu Akbar. Okay, very brief. The rules of Masail cover this. This is the shortest form of reciting Salatul Mayyit. Okay, this is permitted. This is not just a shortcut. This is the actual Salatul Mayyit. The dhikr that we recite is generally longer, but this is the bare essential. Okay, very brief, very easy. All of us know the dhikr, and that brings us to the end. Okay, I don't know if we have time for questions or we do questions after.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's recite a loud salawat for Akil, please. So, in the interest of time, I'll take your permission to take the questions submitted from our online viewers now, and then inshallah we'll proceed with the video, my presentation, and then we have again lots of Q&A time towards the end of the program. So can I have a loud salawat for your permission, please? So the first question, Akil, what is the ruling if our calendar is not the same as that of the Saudi authorities? How does that impact the day of Arafat, Eid, etc.?
So it's a good question. Our calendar generally does not match with the Saudi calendar. However, the Maraja allow that we can perform the rituals of Hajj based on the dates on which everybody else is performing them. So we would go to Arafah. Umrah is performed whenever people want to perform their Umrah. It's really the arkan of Hajj tamattu that become an issue because we have to perform Hajj on the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th, but we perform it together with the rest of the Muslim Ummah.
Okay, thank you. My question is it totally prohibited to put cell phone on ear for men, or is it ihtiyat wajib?
So the answer to that question is that Sayyid Sistani covers, and I believe Sayyid Khamenei as well, considers the ear to be part of the head. And therefore, just as you cannot cover your head with a hat like this, for example, you cannot cover your ear either. So you can cover a portion of the ear with your phone, but you cannot cover your entire ear with your phone or with your headset.
What's the ruling for wiping off the sweat for women in the state of ihram? Can we use tissue or cloth?
Yes, you can use a tissue or a cloth to wipe off sweat from your face. Just make sure you don't cover your entire face, because that is a prohibition in the state of ihram.
Is there a limit for how many people we can do a niyat of niyabat for?
If this is your nth Hajj, and you've been for your wajib Hajj, you can have as many people on your list as you would like, alive or dead, doesn't matter. Okay, but if you're doing niyyah for someone who is alive and they have not performed their wajib Hajj, this does not relieve them of their obligation to perform their wajib Hajj. Their wajib Hajj is wajib upon them. Okay, but you can have as many people on your list as you'd like.
Do we have to say the names of those on our list of people we are doing niyabat for, or would it suffice to say we are doing the tawaf in the niyabat of all these individuals on my list?
Yeah, so as long as your list is static, meaning that once your Umrah Tamattu begins, your list cannot change from Umrah Tamattu Hajj to Hajj Tamattu, because both of these sections of the rituals are part of Hajj. Okay, so if you have a list from the beginning, before you start your Umrah, you can refer to the list, because you can have a really long list and it doesn't make sense to stop before your tawaf begins and now think of the 25 names that you have in your head. You say that you're performing this tawaf for those people on your list. You refer to the list, you don't have to list your names. That list must be static once you fix the list.
Is it permissible for a spouse to remain behind or in front in order to prevent pushing from others, or to hold hands in order to remain close to one another and not get separated from one another?
One of the restrictions in the state of Ihram, as I said, is intimacy with one's spouse. That intimacy includes touching one's spouse with passion, okay? But touching one's spouse or holding her, if you have your wife with you, for example, the wife will need protection, because when performing tawaf, it is very, very difficult for women to do tawaf on their own. And so it is natural for men, for husbands, to protect their women, their wives, while performing tawaf. And there's no problem with that. She can stand behind, she can stand in front, on your side. You can hold her hand, you can hold her shoulders, whatever you feel is comfortable to protect your wife. There's no prohibition. Generally, what people do is they will have their wife in front of them, and then they will have their hands on their shoulder or around them, so that they don't move away and you're moving together in tandem. But there's no problem with that.
Okay, this goes to the beginning of the presentation. Is revolving credit also considered as a debt obligation to be cleared before Hajj? So let me go through and then you can.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm normally able to clear it once in a year in the beginning of the year. Do I need to do this before leaving for Hajj? Also, what about the debt incurred just before leaving for Hajj after all the Hajj payments are done due to unforeseen circumstances? Will that change the istatat? Should I repeat? Okay.
No. Because this is an important masala, if that brother or sister can just send me a quick email or forward it to me.
Okay.
I need to look it up just to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn. I don't believe it's an issue, but let me double check.
Okay. All right.
And if whoever it is, if they can just specify whether they are a muqallid of which marja, that'd be helpful.
Okay, last question. Can we use moisturizer or sunblock in ihram? Can we look in the mirror to set our hijab to make sure hair is covered?
So, can you use moisturizer or sunblock instead of ihram? No. Okay. You cannot use any of these oily substances while in the state of ihram. It is one of the prohibitions. Now, the only exception is medicinal reasons. I mean, if you have some sort of medical reason, remember one thing. When you go for Umrah Tamattu, we leave Medina at night, and generally by Fajr, Umrah Tamattu is done. Okay? Generally. Or early morning. So we're talking about hours. It's not a long span of time. When you go for Hajj Tamattu, we wear ihram on the 8th night or 9th night of Dhul Hijjah. 9th day, you're in ihram. Then becomes 10th night. 10th night, you're in ihram. 10th day, Eid day, by midday or early afternoon, when taqsir or halaq is done, ihram is off. So we're talking about staying in this sort of state of ihram just for 2 to 3 days in total. Okay? There are other rituals that need to be performed, but not in the state of ihram. So we're not in ihram for an extended period of time. That being said, if you cannot stay without these medical ointments over that window of time, then you're permitted, but not for preventative reasons. Okay? You can't say, well, I'm worried about something that might happen, and so I'm using this ointment. No, that doesn't work. If you have a medical condition that requires these medications, that's okay, but you can't use them preventatively. Okay? After the fact is fine, but you can't use them just in case something might happen.
Okay, the second part was can they look in the mirror if they need to?
So looking in the mirror for the purposes of beautification is a problem. For ladies, if you want to just make sure that your hijab is okay, I mean, you can check with a fellow sister, because really it's the intention of the glance that becomes a problem, right? So my suggestion would be that check with a fellow sister and put on your hijab properly if that is a concern.
Okay, thank you. That brings end to this part of the session. So the next part is a visual presentation. So some of you who are going for the first time and have not been to the plains of Arafat, Mina, Muzdalifah. So this is a visual presentation. It's a video. It was done just in 2013, but it's still relevant. So please look at the video. Okay, thank you.
شريك لك لبيك اللهم